Okay, welcome to our seminar, our webinar today on cooling as a service. This is the first event of Knowledge Week, and I'm going to turn you over to our moderator now, Chiedza Mazaiwana.
Thank you, Tracy, and welcome everyone to EEP Africa's webinar on the Agriculture and Energy Nexus, where we're going to discuss the critical topic of cooling as a service. Next slide, please. I am Chiedza Mazaiwana. I will be your moderator for the day. Increasing access to refrigeration and cold storage is critical to strengthening agricultural value chains and enhancing climate adaptation. By reducing post-harvest loss and improving food security, cooling services can improve rural livelihoods and increase farmer incomes. However, cold chain technology is unavailable to many smallholder farmers in Africa due to high upfront costs and a lack of reliable electricity. I come from the eastern part of Zimbabwe, a small town called Mutoko, well known for producing tomatoes. I have witnessed year in and year out my aunts and cousins losing much when markets flood with products or middlemen offer low prices, because as soon as they harvest, the clock starts ticking. By the time the crop reaches the market in Harare, they would have lost a significant amount of their produce. Whilst there are many factors at play in the situation, access to refrigeration and cold storage is a critical part of the solution. Our panel of speakers today will discuss how solar-powered cooling, pay-as-you-go services, and a community-based approach are bringing this solution to new customers and markets. But before we get into this discussion, I would like to briefly introduce EEP Africa. EEP Africa is a multi-donor open-ended trust fund, and our current donors are Austria, Finland, and the Nordic Development Fund. We provide early-stage grant and catalytic loan financing for innovative clean energy projects. Our current focus areas are Southern and East Africa, and our portfolio is spread across 15 countries. We currently have 67 projects in our active portfolio, and to date, we have invested over 50 million euros to support innovative clean energy projects in the two regions. Some fast facts about our portfolio. Next slide, please. EEP Africa has a diverse portfolio, but as you can see here, we primarily fund early-stage off-grid projects, and we're also promoting women leadership in clean energy. Now, today marks the beginning of EEP Africa's Knowledge Week. Next slide, please. And we are hosting a series of online events that include sessions on financing, leadership, and the agriculture and energy nexus. We also look forward to announcing EEP Africa 2021 Project of the Year and 2021 Rising Energy Leaders during the week. We are also pleased to have ESI Africa as our media partner for the Knowledge Week. Please register and tune in to be part of these exciting events. Now let's move on to the agenda of the day. To set the stage for our discussion, CLASP is going to give us the framing remarks and also share insights from the Global Deep Off-Grid Challenge. After that, we are going to dive into a discussion with a panel of project developers from EEP Africa's portfolio, who will share their experiences in providing cold chain services in agricultural value chains, followed by a Q&A session. If you have a question, please post this to the chat box, and someone is monitoring, and I'll be able to pick this up and pose it to our panel. We have also shared some handouts which you may download and have a look at. Now, as Ruth is getting ready to give us framing remarks, let's see where you're tuning in from. Please participate in this poll and indicate the region where you've dialed in from. And for those that have just joined, welcome to our webinar. We are just having a poll where people are indicating where they have joined in from. So please participate in the poll. Okay, great. So we have a good representation from East and Southern Africa. We're still waiting for our friends in Europe and the Middle East. And we also have some participants from Asia of the Americas. Thank you and welcome, everyone. Next slide, please. Now I am going to invite Ruth. Ruth Kimani is the Associate for Clean Energy Access at CLASP. Ruth is going to give us an overview of developments in cold chain solutions and share experiences of the Global Deep Off-Grid Cold Chain Challenge. Ruth, over to you.
Thank you so much, Chiedza and EEP Africa for setting up this platform. Hello, everyone. My name is Ruth Kimani, and I'm an associate with CLASP in the Clean Energy Access team based in Nairobi, and very happy to be participating in this discussion. As mentioned on today's topic, which is very exciting, cooling as a service, I'll be presenting on behalf of Efficiency for Access Coalition, which is a global coalition that is working to promote high-performing appliances that enables access to clean energy for the world's poorest people. The E4A coalition is coordinated jointly by CLASP, who is a leading international voice and resource for appliance energy efficiency policies and market acceleration initiatives, and the UK's Energy Saving Trust, who are a specialist organization in energy efficiency, product verification, data insight, advice, and research. Next slide, please. Now, for today's discussion, and just to set a scene and looking at the broader context of the cold chain market and technology, as Chiedza mentioned in her introduction, that indeed cold technologies are very critical for modern agricultural systems, and they have potential to significantly improve not only the livelihoods for smallholder farmers, but also other smaller businesses that might be related to agriculture and other related value chains, and are useful in terms of reducing food waste and increasing farmer profits. Now, for this slide, just to put into perspective the scale of this opportunity, it highlights some of some key statistics from reports that have been put out by organizations such as Food and Agricultural Organization and the Kigali Cooling Efficiency Program, together with Carbon Trust in their latest report on net zero cold chains. And basically, it's estimated 1.3 billion tons of food are lost or wasted per year globally, which is an estimated 4.4 billion tons of CO2 emissions also from food loss and wastage per year are released globally. And looking at basically the impact in terms on the smallholder farmers and other downstream actors in the energy, and especially in emerging economies, it's estimated that 15% of their income is reduced as a result of this food loss. Next slide, please. Now, drawing down to sub-Saharan Africa, and looking at the cold chain opportunity, essentially, we can see that it's estimated 40 to 50% of food loss in sub-Saharan Africa is lost before it reaches the customer, and 30% of this, 30% of which post-harvest losses could be saved if we had cold solutions in place. According to Power for All Cold Technology Spotlight report, it estimated that the number of off-grid farmers that are serviceable with cold storage solutions by 2020 was 1.5 million, which is representative of a market opportunity of 1.32 billion US. So essentially, this is to show that there is a huge market opportunity for cold chain, and it's very essential. Next slide, please. Now, this slide just shows an example of the agricultural cold chain, and what is important to highlight here is that is to highlight the supply chain, and that there are several points involved between when food is produced at the production level to when it reaches the consumer. And so along the supply chain, there are various points for which cold chain and is very critical to make sure that food is not being wasted. And also, just to highlight at the same level at these different points, there are a variety of actors in the supply chain, farmers, aggregators, transporters, wholesalers, all of which who would need to work together to in tandem, basically, to provide the service for cold chain. Next slide, please. No, okay, wait, before we move on, just to highlight that from our research and from our studies, basically, we have found that especially in emerging economies, a lot of where we find cold storage solutions are mainly located near the grid and will mainly used by large aggregators or large farms that are able to afford these solutions. And on the other hand, looking at the first mile market where we are finding these small farmers and aggregators, there are very few that are located there, and this is where also a lot of the food waste happens. Next slide. And now the off-grid, or also the cold chain market, and especially in the first mile, it's very nascent. It's at its infancy, and so a lot of the players that are already there, majority we have found through our work are mainly like small startup companies and are exposed to a variety of challenges, that are related with introducing new technologies, both on the technology side as well as on the business side. And so this slide just highlights a few of those. Of course, one major challenge is affordability, which I'm sure we can all agree in. And from anecdotal evidence from the market research we conducted in Kenya in 2018 on the cold chain, we found that almost zero commercial sales of walk-in cold rooms products at the first mile level. And whatever products we found there, most of them had been funded either through donor programs or paid for or just distributed by the farmer by maybe like a government program. So there is a lot of challenge in terms of making these products available and affordable for the target communities. Then uncertainty, another key challenge is uncertainty about the commercial viability of first mile cold chain solutions. And so underlying this challenge, I would say that we have found there's very limited data that's available both on the market as well as on the technology. And this is data that is crucial for actors, when raising investment. They need this data when they need this data to, when making decisions on where to expand, on how to enter markets and set up these cold chain businesses. So a lot of this data is missing. And so and further, even when we are looking even in situations where we are having like these attractive business models, like today's discussion is looking at the cooling as a service. We are discussing cooling as a service, and even where this kind of business model exists or are existing, there is very low level of awareness among consumers and other would-be target farmers and beneficiaries of this kind of services. And so there's still a lot that needs to be done in terms of ensuring we have data to raise enough support and making sure there's enough access to finance, basically, to make sure these products are being rolled out to where they're needed. Next slide, please. Now, yeah, so leading on to this and having identified a number of these challenges from the initial market research. So in 2018, we basically implemented the first iteration of the Global Leap Off-Grid Cold Chain Challenge, which is essentially an international competition that seeks to identify and promote energy efficient, sustainable, and affordable walk-in cold room technologies for fast mile, targeted for fast mile markets, with a focus on the food value chains in this market segment. So the Global Leap Off-Grid Cold Chain Challenge essentially combines a business model assessment as well as technology assessment. Through this, we are able to see, we are able to generate data on what solutions are available in the market, how are they performing, what business models and what approaches are being utilized in the market, and how are they, and how are the results of these approaches, or how are they being relevant and suitable in the different applications that they are put in. So currently, we are running the second iteration of this competition, and we'll be seeing 16 walk-in cold room products tested over the next 6 months between now and September of next year, and in Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, and India. So it will be very interesting to get the results out of this process. So next slide, please. So the intention of the Global Leap Off-Grid Cold Chain Challenge, as I mentioned, is the purpose or the intention is to try and address some of these gaps that we have identified in the cold chain market. And so we expect from this challenge that we'll be able to have cold storage manufacturers can be able to differentiate what products are available in the marketplace, and maybe this informs their marketing strategies to increase sales and make sure these solutions are being reached to as many people as possible. And then also off-grid companies, off-grid energy companies, as well as distributors will have an opportunity to be able to identify, they have a reference points and can be able to go and see these are the available products, this is how they perform. And we're also hoping that through this also investors are able to have access to this similar information and know about these technologies, and this will go a long way in terms of raising money which needed by these companies. So next slide, please. Sorry, okay, yeah. So basically, all of this is to say that there's a lot more that is needed. There's a lot of more interventions and support that is needed from the different stakeholders in the whole chain overall. And but on a positive note, it's encouraging to see that there are early innovators who are already out there on the ground taking up the challenge of delivering these solutions in the first mile. And I think a lot of them are represented by the panelists today. And so we'll be very keen to hear and learn from their experiences on what is working and how their successes can be replicable and be used to scale and expand this market, and especially in different market contexts. So thank you, and over to you, Chiedza.
Thank you very much, Ruth, for those framing remarks. Very interesting statistics there on the market opportunity that exists. But also I'd like to highlight the one that indicates that up to 30% of post-harvest food losses can be saved through cold storage solutions. So let's turn over to our panel to hear how they have been working to contribute towards this. And today we are joined by Denis Karema and Julian Michel, Florian Martini, and Tracy Kimathi. Now we'll start off with Denis. Denis, may you please briefly tell us about the work that you're doing at SokoFresh with smallholder farmers in Kenya?
Thank you very much, and great to see that we have quite an audience today. My name is Denis Karema. I'm the CEO of SokoFresh, and at SokoFresh we provide farmers with access to first mile cold storage that is solar powered. We work with technologies that have a level of mobility so that we are able to capitalize on seasonality, meaning we are able to have cold storage infrastructure move from one region to the other as the seasons in other value chains work. We are currently working in the mango, avocado, banana, and French bean value chains here in Kenya. And we are very happy to be part of this session to share what we are learning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Denis, and Inspira Farms. Now, Inspira Farms featured as a case study in one of our publications, Energizing Resilience, and they are expanding their presence across Africa with the recent establishment of a regional office representation for Southern Africa that's based in Harare. Julian, can you please tell us more about Inspira Farms?
Chiedza, thanks so much. And yes, we were very, very proud to have opened up the office in Zimbabwe. It's been a real treat. First off, thank you very much for the opportunity. I just want to say what a privilege it is to share the panel with such a kind of a bunch of innovating companies that I really, really respect across things. So thank you to fellow panelists and everyone for taking the time. Very quickly, a little bit about Inspira Farms myself. I joined Inspira Farms earlier this year as CEO after spending 5 years with a company called Mcopa, where we've also done quite a lot of innovative work to figure out some of the modalities of how to access the bottom of the pyramid there. I'm trying to take some of these lessons across to Inspira Farms as well. Inspira Farms is a company that's always designed around reducing post-harvest loss. The company's always tried to design systems and processes that will enable that, and they hit upon the fact that actually the main way you can impact cold chain is through the main way you can hit upon post-harvest losses through effective cold chain. The team have through that they're working primarily within the fresh produce, and we've decided to work right the way across the industry. So from the smallholders right away up to the big guys. So from 20 square meters to 2,000 square meters right the way across. But behind that, whether or not you're working for a big national level infrastructure, which we've done, whether or not you're working with a group of smallholders, we've really hit upon 4 things that matter to us in the design process when we're getting the cold chain right. That is reducing post-harvest loss, increasing the shelf life, and decreasing the OPEX and giving you access to data. And those 4 design principles are critical to making sure the solutions we give work for whichever type of grower that we're working with. And it's important to us that we work with all levels to help reduce post-harvest loss, and the smallholder has been critical in that for us. I would say as part of our formula in designing and reducing post-harvest loss, there's one sort of brackets at the end there. We also offer finance for our customers as well, because offering finance is a critical way to reducing the barrier to getting access to technology, as was pointed out by Ruth earlier. So how do we do it? We do it through using some of the latest technologies we can, really focusing on what the customer's needs are and designing specifically for those customers. All our systems are typically modular and energy efficient, so we can be on-grid, we can be off-grid as well, and we can be hybrid. And we do all of those things to get it right for the individual circumstances of the customers that we're working with. So we can be both a technology provider and directly supporting customers. And then typically we like to grow with our customers, and this is where you can go from being an aggregator into accessing the smallholders and getting into in-field cooling. So I'm going to leave it at that for the moment, and then hopefully talk a little bit more about cooling in the first mile later on. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Julian, and we look forward to hearing more. Now let me introduce Feizen. Feizen is part of our new portfolio, and they provide intelligent solar-powered cooling solutions that are pay-as-you-go enabled to improve food safety, reduce waste, and increase incomes. Florian, you may go ahead and share a bit more about the work that you're doing.
Yeah, hi Chiedza. First of all, thank you also for the opportunity to be in part of this webinar. That's great, yeah. So my name is Florian, and I'm representing the company Phaesun. Yeah, there's different pronunciations like Phaesun. The correct way would be Phaesun. Phaesun has been founded in 2001 and is based in Memmingen, Germany. And currently the team consists of 30 off-grid experts with different areas of responsibility and specialization. Phaesun has been specializing in the sales, service and installation of off-grid photovoltaics and wind energy systems for regions that are not connected to the electricity grid. We have a comprehensive product portfolio with more than 3,400 different products in the off-grid area. I am part of Phaesun's research and innovation team, and together with the company Solar Cooling Engineering and the University of Hohenheim, we developed the self-chill approach, targeting cooling solutions for smallholder farmers and farmers cooperatives in the tropics and subtropics. So what actually is self-chill? What are we doing? So a kit consisting of a solar system and a self-chill cooling unit forms the core component of our systems. It produces ice from water that is stored in an ice reservoir that we call water chiller. And with that, it's compensating fluctuations in the solar energy or the cooling demand. So the main energy storage in our systems is not a battery, but normal water converted into ice as a thermal energy storage, which is most energy efficient. The cold water from the water chiller then serves the actual cooling device. So based on the self-chill components, a wide range of system configurations regarding the size, temperature level, and target product is possible. For example, cold rooms, milk coolers, or ice makers. The biggest advantage of self-chill is its modularity, making it possible to adapt the cooling system to the framework and demand conditions of individual regions and countries, and even to scale a system up or down easily at a later stage. On the one hand, we offer complete plug-and-play self-chill kits pre-assembled in Germany. However, we actually want to encourage local value creation using local materials and manpower. So our trained partners only buy the self-chill core components from us and then produce the systems locally. This allows the costs to be drastically reduced while still maintaining high quality. In addition, the locally available know-how guarantees reliable service and maintenance, which is generally the most important challenge in my opinion. We are also experienced in conducting solar cooling trainings for know-how transfer and assisting with system sizing and configuration. We also developed an intelligent control that exploits the full potential of the solar supply and regulates the cooling load highly efficiently. And it also includes a monitoring system, so you can see all performance data online. And of course, the systems are also pay-as-you-go enabled. Thank you.
Thank you, Florian. And I will try and remember how to pronounce the name correctly. But now moving on, last but not least, Tracy Moles. Tracy Moles is also in our new portfolio and is one of the nominees for the Global Deep Off-Grid Challenge. Tracy, please go ahead and tell us more about your work.
Thank you, Chiedza, and I'm happy to be here with all the panelists. So hello, everyone. My name is Tracy Kimathi. I'm the founder of Baridi, which is a local Kenyan startup that enables solar-powered cooling in East Africa's livestock value chain. So I have worked with livestock farmers for the last 3 years, and quite frankly, there are two big opportunities within the value chain in the context of sustainability, both being clean energy and meat preservation. And Baridi basically offers solar-powered chillers designed to provide both efficient energy and meat preservation to livestock economies across the Horn of Africa. To date, the team and I have designed, developed, and implemented our very own solar chiller assembled in Kenya by Kenyans, with the average age of our executive team being 28 years old. So in reality, it was assembled in Kenya by Kenyan youths, and we're extremely proud of that. In line with today's discussion, Project Baridi operates under two revenue models. Number one being a pay-as-you-chill business model that allows our consumers to aggregate and store their meat as they go and as a community. and the technology charges a daily tariff in exchange for overnight preservation. Our second revenue model, which kind of goes with the pay-as-you-go, is the lease-to-own model that allows private agribusinesses to increase their production capacities while enjoying an affordable payback plan within our Baridi models. So in terms of market access, we're specifically looking into livestock value chains that is targeting cattle, goat, chicken, sheep, matumbo, anything that is a beef product by the definition. And one of the scope of our markets is Barma market, middle segment commercial meat markets within Nairobi, Kigali, or Gaborone, basically in capital cities that are fed from these rural pastoralistic communities within northern Kenya. And typically our target markets trade about 2,500 carcasses each week. Our current unit is stationed, again, as I mentioned, at Barma, and they act as the largest retail outlet to butcheries who basically are the largest source of meat to Nairobi households. Each of our cold room we aim to install has the ability to annually preserve over 280,000 kilograms of meat, save up to 1,500 tons of CO2 emissions due to our solar generation capacities, and add an estimated yearly economic benefit of $5,000 for a vendor renting 1 meter cubed of cold space. So there's a lot of potential within the livestock value chain, as we can see, both in the rural, but especially in the urban commercial markets that we specifically target. So asante sana for listening, and I'm looking forward to the Q&A sessions.
Thank you, Tracy. And yes, we're happy to have you in our portfolio. Local solutions developed by the locals, and also women-led. So yeah, that is a lot to celebrate. Now, let's turn over to our audience and participate in a second poll. And the question that we're going to be answering in this second poll is, what is the biggest market barrier to scaling up cooling as a service in Africa? Please check your screens and participate on in the poll. The biggest market barrier to scaling up cooling as a service in Africa. Okay, as we are waiting for the results, I would like to welcome those who have just joined. I see our list of participants is growing. Thank you very much for taking part in this webinar. Okay, there we go. So the biggest market barrier is indicated by the poll. Highest cost, the high cost of products or services, and followed by a lack of customer or market data. So it seems the high upfront cost is really a huge challenge in scaling up cooling as a service in Africa. And hopefully in this discussion that we're having, we are going to tackle some of those issues and also get to understand how our panel and portfolio is working to address that big challenge. Let's move on to our panel. And as we move to this session, please remember that if you have any questions, you can post them in the side chat box throughout the discussion. And we'll also have handouts that we have shared, which you may download and have a look at. Now for questions to our panel. The first one, Florian. What role can companies experienced in developed What role can companies experienced in developing cooling solutions in other regions play in helping to grow the cooling as a service sector scale in Africa?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Chiedza. So Feizen has now been active in the off-grid sector for 20 years with a special focus on the African continent. We have long-standing and reliable partner companies in most countries and have thereby built a solid network. So this gives us a direct insight into the needs and challenges of the rural population. And we have noticed that the major challenge with cooling systems on the market is the lack of flexibility and ensuring sustainable maintenance. Most farmers or cooperatives are limited in production volume due to a lack of refrigeration facilities. And at the time of the investment, it is very difficult to say how much the production volume will increase due to the cooling possibility. I think that's just what we saw on the poll right now, that the upcoming, the upfront costs are a major challenge, since you do not know how much your income will increase with your cooling appliance. So with Selfshield, you now have the possibility to make a small investment at first with a water chiller with, let's say, just like 3 cooling units. With this, for example, you can cool down 250 liters of milk daily, or you can run a cold room with 500 kilos of fruit or vegetables per day. If with this existing cooling possibility, now gradually more can be produced and distributed, the farmer can, after a year, for example, add another 3 cooling units to the same water chiller and thereby cool 500 liters of milk or 1,000 kilos of fruit and vegetables per day. So it's very easy to scale up and down your existing cooling system with just adding or removing cooling units to the same system configuration. In order to offer cooling as a service, it is helpful to be able to monitor the entire system remotely as the owner of the system. We have therefore developed a control system that displays all relevant parameters such as temperatures, humidity, power consumption, solar data, and many more online in visual graphs, so that you can see at a glance whether the system is working correctly. In addition, you can set up alarm notifications so that you are automatically notified, for example, if a fault occurs in the solar system or the cold room temperature exceeds a certain value. We have also integrated the so-called Pineberry software, which greatly simplifies the processing and transactions for cooling as a service applications. The customers can pay for the cooling service with cash, mobile money, or credit card, which is then documented automatically in the app. So the owner of a Selfshield cooling system can then, for example, issue pay-as-you-go tokens that enable the customer to use the cooling service for a certain time span. And of course, you can handle everything from your smartphone. Yeah, if you have any questions about the Selfshield approach itself or about our company, you can always contact me or check our webpage on selfshield.org. Thank you.
Thanks, Florian. And yeah, a critical role there to play on facilitating learnings and skills and technology transfer for those that are way advanced to introducing these technologies and models to younger markets. Now we move on to Tracy. Tracy, why did you choose the meat value chain in your intervention? And how can cooling as a service benefit a meat market? I mean, I have come across many cooling as a service projects, and most of them are focusing on horticultural produce or fish, and not necessarily the value chain that you targeted. So please let us know, how did you choose the meat value chain?
Right. Thank you for the question, Chiedza. And the story was before I entered the solar cooling space, I was conducting heavy research within pastoralist communities within southern Kenya, i.e. the Masai Mara, and northern Kenya, which is Isiolo and Marsabit. Originally, my research was more so in access to energy, but it became clear that the more capital and trade within these value chains were associated with livestock. I remember one of the most graphic sites that made me specialize within meat preservation specifically was when I saw hundreds of cattle and goats being shoved in a pit dead. And this was during a dry season. And apparently this livestock collapsed and died over a period of days due to either heat stroke or just plain starvation. And there was no production or preservation facility available within these regions. And since then, I've personally had a preference in pursuing net zero post-slaughter losses. So even though the concept of livestock preservation started in the rural pastoralist environment, once the team and I did research on whether to introduce these facilities in the northern Kenyan communities, it was really quick to see the lack of ATP, which is basically an inability to pay from these communities, as Ruth mentioned earlier on in this webinar. And apart from that, we came to realize that northern Kenyan pastoralists, who tend to be the producers of meat, tend to have a cultural norm of not slaughtering their animals unless it's absolutely necessary due to their association of cows with wealth. And due to these two factors, we were kind of forced to go down the value chain into urban commercial meat markets, like the one that we're currently looking into, which is Barma Market, that we have our first unit launched in. It's within Nairobi, it's in Sharimoyo, it's in a crowded meat market, but that's where, you know, over 2,500 carcasses are moved per week, which is quite impressive. And there are over 380 meat vendors who require this cooling as a service facility, and majority of them are way above the ability to pay spectrum, unlike their northern Kenya rural community pastoralist counterparts. And just to finalize on the question, the livestock value chain has been heavily neglected, and that's why you might not see many solar chillers within that value chain. It's not just, you know, solar cold rooms, it's, you know, the production facilities in the livestock value chain has technically been ignored for eons, if not centuries. Sorry. So whilst we were developing and assembling our own solar chillers locally, the team encountered heavy-set problems, like how to literally defy gravity by hanging a carcass on rails, whilst at the same time trying to create relatively low temperatures that mostly linger at 0 degrees Celsius with the power of the sun, which tends to be quite difficult because you need battery backups, and it is a relatively low temperature to go on. So other than the fact that the livestock value chain has been heavily neglected, we also have the technological problems that kind of came in as we were assembling the unit, like, you know, how will we achieve 0 degrees Celsius with a power source? I'm not going to say solar is unreliable, but it's not strong enough to reach zero, unlike if you were doing potatoes or tomatoes, which needed 5 degrees Celsius. But luckily enough, we had the Strathmore University Research Center that relatively helped us a lot on these issues. So we're really looking forward to meeting up with more people who join the Pay As You Chill movement, especially within the livestock industry, so that we can exchange ideas on how to perfect not only the value chain challenges when it comes to cultural norms, but also the technological issues that come with designing a quote-unquote perfect unit for goat, beef, camel, and chicken preservation. And we're also looking for ideas on how to make these highly capex technologies affordable, especially to the rural pastoralists within East Africa who probably need it the most. So if you have your 2 cents, please send me a message on LinkedIn and we can explore this discussion a bit further. So thank you, Chiedza.
Thanks, Tracy. And you've brought a very good point there on the strength of partnerships and learning and tapping from others. You know, this as it develops, you definitely won't be able to do it alone. There is strength in coming together and having partners to go and achieve. Julian, Inspira Farms. Can you please, just let us know a few insights on the types of produce that are appropriate for on-farm cold storage in strengthening the agricultural value chain. So a lot of, we've heard a lot from SokoFresh. They mentioned the importance of first mile chilling, even in Ruth's presentation, and that speaks to the work that you're also doing. So can you please enlighten us on farm cold storage and how it strengthens agricultural value chains?
Chiedza, yeah, thank you. Look, I just couldn't agree more. I think as you start the cold chain, it's kind of like any process. What you put in at the start, you get out at the other end, and the more you put in at this end, the more you capture this end, the more you get out at that end. I think for me, this is such an important question, the way we go about our design and our thinking. I think everyone on this call or the webinar will understand and know it, right? But when you harvest some fresh produce, it's an organism, right? It's a living thing that is alive in the ground, right, in its own way. And of course, so when you pick a berry or an avocado or some fruit, whatever you pick, at that moment, effectively the degradation starts of that produce, and different produces degrade more quickly than others. So the sooner that you can remove the field heat and get it down to the optimal temperature for cold storage, and every different produce has its own different temperatures, the sooner you get to preserve the quality that's gone in there. And that's what we really see is very, very much missing within so much of the horticultural sector within the region. So all of our systems are very much designed to not only just be, it's not just a cold room. And that's a really important thing. If you put in, an understanding that if you go from field temperature with the field heat into a cold room, that won't necessarily cool things down quickly. And that's why you do have very specific pre-cooling techniques to make sure that you can bring down the cooling, you can bring down the temperature of the produce in the required amount of time. And I'm going to give you an example that's slightly outside of the smallholder's traditional domain, but I think given that photo that you've got up there is a very kind of apt one. If you take blueberries, which are super, super delicate fruits, and again, that's part of some of the people we work with down in Zimbabwe, down in Chiedza. But you harvest these berries, they can come in at 30, 35 degrees. You have to really, really get those berries down very, very quickly and do it in a way that will not increase, will not risk chilling injuries and other damage if you were to chill too quickly. So getting that right is a real kind of tricky thing, not without too much moisture loss, etc. But one of the things we've learned is for every hour delay between the picking and getting it down to temperature can result in at least 1 day's less shelf life. And when you're exporting goods, that extra day in shelf life really, really matters. So the inverse is also true as well. So the sooner you get it in there, the more the shelf life you can have. The better the cooling you have, the better, the longer the shelf life you can get. And that enables people to not only get great produce that's really capturing all of that quality, but it also now allows people to move from air freight to sea freight, which is brilliant. When you bring it back to more of a smallholder context, the same is true in Kenya. We've got an example up in Mwea where by applying first mile cooling, you can change the process on the farm. And because if you know that you're going to be transporting that produce for 200 kilometers down to Nairobi for processing, you treat it one way. If you actually can do some light processing on farms and create the jobs that come with that, you can therefore preserve more of the quality and start the cold chain right there on farm. And I'll give you an example. I have a customer who aggregates at the moment. He sent his cold truck up last Wednesday to go and get some, for those who are in the know, from Mwea to Remaruti, which is something like 200 kilometers round trip. And the cold truck gets 1 ton of food. That's no good, right? That the economics don't stack up there. So this is about helping the value chain get the economics stacking up. And of course, if you get a cold room on farm, on site, even if it's a small little cluster there, you can store up your produce until it's time you have a full truck, and then you get the economics of that benefit. So for me, there's a few things. One, cooling and doing it really well for that specific reason matters, right? That's a number one. And number two, by having cooling on farm, it allows you to manage the uncertainty, because we all know that the roads are unreliable. Trucks do break down, and you either leave your crops sat in the sun, basically degrading and losing you all of the hard work and effort that you've gone in, both economic and in terms of just emotion and time, or you can actually manage that uncertainty by having the cooling there. So that's really, really important to us. One of the other things we kind of also recognize is you've got to work with people to kind of manage that process. People are used to doing it a certain way, and it's a bit of a leap of faith to work in. It's a bit of a leap of faith to get people to see the benefits, and you've got to work with people to demonstrate that this really can give you benefits, and those benefits are both economic and environmental. And that's what for us is particularly exciting, is the fact that the economic benefits to the growers also means direct environmental benefits to the whole community and the broader environment. So that's a very big deal for us. And I think the last part about having things on farm, which is actually a worry for farmers, is the service and reliability. And you've heard some of the other panelists talk about this, but having that remote monitoring to allow off-site monitoring to make sure that it stays up, because a cold room that doesn't work is just not that much use. So keeping the reliability and the technology into a place where it will continue to perform and you continue to yield those benefits is critical. In terms of the way we go about our business as well, when you work with the smaller holders, getting the financing right and the finance products we have for that level of organization is quite different to the ones we would for much, much bigger projects. And trying to match people's incomes as much as you can to allow them to access this cooling as a service is just so important to enable them broader access. And I think maybe, again, I'm sure a lot of people know this, but in Kenya, only 4% of the fresh of the horticultural produce is actually exported. Most of it goes into to local markets. Most of it, and there's such a huge amount of it that actually it does just unfortunately rot and give up methane, which is 27 times the value of carbon dioxide. So to me, it's a huge deal to get out to the to roll out cooling more effectively across a broader plane than just where we are right now. So that's certainly where Inspira Farms will be focusing on in the coming years.
Thanks, Julian. And now we quickly move over to Denis. I'm cognizant that we're slowly running out of time. But Denis, your question is, how can an integrated model that aggregates produce fill market gaps? And how can companies deal with the challenge of seasonality in providing services and building market linkages?
Thank you very much. I think to your first question about an integrated model, I think it's really critical, and the way we look at it is looking at the business model from the farmer's perspective, looking at the value chain as a whole, and really thinking about how can the intervention that we provide be part of a more holistic approach. And so for SokoFresh in particular, what we realized is that by providing cold storage by itself, it's not a complete solution for the smallholder farmers, because the smallholder farmer also has a challenge accessing some of the market that can pay a better price for them to be able to afford to pay for services like cold storage and for them to aggregate in a much better way. There's also the issue of cash flow, that for the smallholder farmer, they really need instant payments for their produce, and so looking at integrating credit providers. So I think a holistic approach is really important. And then the other bit of it is looking at the issues of seasonality, and the way we look at it as SokoFresh is really working with technology providers that can enable us to provide technology that has a level of mobility. And what that means is that we are able to move from one region that is specialized in a certain value chain to another region that's specialized in another value chain. And I would also emphasize that for SokoFresh, we are really working with and are technology agnostic. So looking at the best technologies applicable for different use cases for us providing services to smallholder farmers. And so we are keen to be able to work with a wider range of technology providers whose technology is fit for purpose, in the sense that it enables us to serve smallholder farmers in rural communities, enables us to be able to provide technology that can preserve a wide range of produce, and also technology that can fully rely on solar to be able to achieve its potential.
Thank you, Denis. That was a nice presentation that you gave there, and thank you for the response. I'm already receiving questions from the audience, so let's dive right into it. And the first question, Denis, if you could just come back online. The first question is for you. What will be the ideal volume of mango, avocado, banana, etc. to make the venture economically viable?
Okay. Yeah, so good question. So for us, because we are not selling the technology but providing it as a service, the answer to this question is what is the ideal volume that a buyer needs to be able to come and collect produce from farmers. And we find that most buyers work with transportation solutions that can transport about 5 tons of produce. And so I would say at 5 tons, we are able to provide, our cold storage can be able to preserve 5 tons at a time, which then means that a buyer can, or for the farmers, they are able to aggregate sufficient volume to make it attractive for buyers to come and collect.
All right. And our next question is for Julian. In which regions is Inspire operating?
Hi, so we have anchor markets in Kenya, Zimbabwe now, and Ghana. That's for all of our products. We actually work, we were trying to work Pan-Africa because we, like I said, we work with some quite big operations, quite much smaller operations. For the smallholder, the focus is very much on Kenya and East Africa at the moment. If we see opportunities elsewhere, we will absolutely take that, and there are some on the cards. But at the moment, we're really focusing with the smallholders in the Kenya and East Africa region.
Okay. Can you also take a stab at this one? It was posed to the panel, and anyone can jump in if they feel they have a different opinion. But the question is, one challenge is transportation of products to external markets, especially where there are poor road infrastructure. How is this challenge addressed by your company to keep the products fresh and ensure their quality?
Yeah, that's really good. So one of the things that we're very conscious of, right, is we provide what we think is like great technology, but the reality is to get the cold chain really working requires the training of the farmer as well. So if you don't understand how to, if you don't train the guys how to do it and train them how to use the cold chain, that will do it. So understanding what is likely to happen between wherever you are in your farm to wherever it's going, and making sure it's right. And for those of you who know cold chain, there's some fairly straightforward things. If you cool something to 0 degrees, but it goes into a truck that's warm, and then it goes up to 10 degrees, you're actually going to do a lot more damage. So understand, and this is where I talked about earlier about getting the right designs for each customer to understand, is the produce going to be transferred in a refrigerated truck, if it's going to be a non-refrigerated truck, and over what distance, and understanding those helps you get the right temperatures from the very beginning, so that you effectively have a slow process of bringing that temperature down over time and not allowing it to go back up. And that's actually one of the tricks, is understanding what the value chain of that individual will look like, so you can therefore design for that. But ideally, and going back to the berry example, by the way, even when you take a berry down to the right temperatures, and we typically take it down to, I think it's like 5 to 8, goes on the packing floors, processed, and then step down again, it's then in the holding room. And on a lot of the farms we're working with now, you're even putting on specialized docking stations, so that you never get any warm air coming in there for risks of condensations that could lead to mold over the journey, etc. And like the same logic applies. The berries are very, very sensitive fruit, but nonetheless, the same logic is there. You want to avoid variation, undue ups and downs and variations within that cold chain.
Okay. Thanks, Julian. The next question is for Tracy. We'll take 2 more and then we'll end the session. So Tracy, how do you ensure that the meat meets the nutritional value or quality before taking it to the market? Is Baridi running 100% on solar?
Yes, trying to get my webcam on. Great. Yeah, so yes, Baridi runs 100% on solar. So we use solar PV during the day and a really big battery bank during the night.
So we are 100% off-grid. I think that's the question that you are asking. And how do we ensure that the need is still standardized? I think that was the question. So what we do is we filter it even before it comes in. So with meat, there's a lot of cross-contamination that usually happens, and we really came to realize that once we went into the market, is the fact that as much as we can try as much as possible to ensure that we have the cooling standards, again, like I said, for us with meat, we deal with 0 degrees Celsius so that it doesn't freeze, but so that it doesn't have enough microbial growth to have slime growth over it. So we do 0 degrees Celsius, so that's a really good standard, and that's how we make sure that. But we also need to make sure that there's no cross-contamination once they enter our cold rooms. So what we have is we have a really good shield of preventing what comes into our cold rooms. We have a really good structured O&M spreadsheet that our employees always look into. Like we look at order before it comes in, like the smell, we look at colorization, we look at slime growth. So what we do, number one, is make sure that there's no bad meat that's coming in to cross-contaminate, and we also make sure that the temperature ranges and the way we handle the meat handling procedures within the cold room are up to international standards, to say the least. So I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Tracy. It certainly does. So one last question. Many agribusinesses rely on yearly crop cycles. How do you convince them that these systems are amortized over the long term and will add value to them? So anyone from the panel can take a stab at this one. Agribusinesses rely on yearly crop cycles. How do you convince them that these systems are amortized over the long term and will add value to them? Maybe Denis, you can come in.
Yes, sure. I think the way we look at it for SokoFresh is one, so we buy cold storages upfront and have to make sure that they are able to earn themselves back in maybe about 5 years. And so it's really important for agribusinesses to sort of look at having a wider use case for technologies that they invest in, because the issue of seasonality may not change, because a lot of it is just how these value chains work. But it's really looking at how can you be able to drive up the utilization of the asset across the year. And so like for SokoFresh, how we've done it is really looking at value chains that overlap, so that at the end of the avocado value chain, we are able to start providing the same solution in the mango value chain. So it's really looking at it from that perspective. And that then goes to which technology do you choose, because you then need to choose a technology that gives you some level of flexibility so that then you can really make it work. Otherwise, it may be a challenge if you only have 3 months of utilization of a cold storage over the year to really make it work for your business.
All right, great. Thank you, Denis, for that response. And we've come to the end of our webinar. We would like to thank you for participating, and please join us again tomorrow as we discuss the theme on leadership. We're going to focus on building an inclusive energy transition. We are very excited also that we will hear from our 2021 Rising Energy Leaders. And so thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.